It should be just a couple seconds.
Okay. So are you gonna introduce me? I do that myself or what?
Yep, I'll introduce you, and then I'll kind of moderate it, ask questions as we go.
Okay.
All right, we are live on Facebook. I will give it a few minutes just to make sure everyone is can find it before we get started here. But yeah, Brad, I'll turn my my screen and my I'll go on mute. And if there's any questions, they'll write in the comments, and I'll put my video back on, and then ask you the question.
Okay.
All right, I guess we can get working here. So today we are doing a webinar on climate change, and we're very lucky to have Brad Piehl, one of our board members and an environmental consultant. He's going to be chatting about climate change with us today. So this is kind of I think this is the 5th installment of our webinar series. It's been super successful thus far. We've been getting a lot of views after we post the video. It's just a good way for us to reach a wider audience than we would be able to if we were just doing the educational hike. So it's something that we're excited about. We've covered a wide range of topics thus far already, and we're excited to keep it going. But without further ado, I'll pass it off to Brad, and he'll start his presentation.
Great. Thanks, Cam. And probably a lot of people in Summit know me. I've been part of the Forest Health Task Force for a long time, and I'm a forest hydrologist by training, education background, and worked in forestry, watershed issues in Colorado for way too long, more than 2 decades. So anyway, this is some of my take on what I think is kind of a cleaner approach to looking at climate change in Summit County in the high country in Colorado. And so we're just going to start, and I guess questions at the end. So title of my my talk is basically the new normal, and what does that mean? And I think it means the hot and dry in the high country. So let's get into what that really means. And a lot of you seen these what are called the hockey stick graphs, and showing temperatures going, CO2 concentrations and things like that, and then they just go straight up in more recent times. And this is not something that I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about climate modeling. If you're real interested, and there's a lot of people that are smarter than I am about it. So what I do want to talk about is kind of frame this is there's a publication that came out in 2014, so 6 years ago now. It's called Climate Change in Colorado, and it was done by, it's a synthesis of other scientific information and some analysis. And I think it's really good. I'm going to be kind of going through a couple of the points in the executive summary, which was revised just 2 years ago. And I can give you links to all this stuff at the end. What I want to do is I want to show you some bullet points and then figures, graphs, things like that, and talk about what does this really mean and try to distill it down as quickly as we can. So that's going to be the approach of this, and we'll go through it kind of by different pieces that climate change impacts. So, climate change in Colorado, what do we have? Everyone keeps saying, well, is it getting warmer? And guess what? Colorado is already, average temperatures in Colorado have increased by 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the past 30 years. So we have experienced probably more, as much, if not more than any other state in the US. We've already experienced a fair amount of temperature increase compared to what our averages were before. So we're somewhat unique in that regard. Four of the 6 warmest years on record since 1895 have occurred in the last, you can see some of this data is a little bit old, but still 2012 to 2017 were the 6 warmest years. Not surprising to a lot of people. All right, so let's look at these graphs. This one shows temperature departure, and if you look at the graph, the yellow line is the global temperature. This is historic. No predictions involved here. And the dark red one is Colorado. US is in orange. So you can see the US is relatively higher than the global temperature as well, but Colorado is up there and increasing. This only goes to 2013, I think, or 2012. And so you can see that on the end right there, that circle pops up. So looking at this temperature departure, this is a historic with the blue and red bars, but the line is modeled. So you can see how the line follows the historic really well. And so if you go to see that purple line that just zoomed in there, that's 2020 where we are right now, and we are at 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you go up to 2050, which is a lot of times what we're talking about is what it's going to be like in 2050, which is only 30 years from now, we'd be at 4 degrees. So those are significant changes. Let's talk about precipitation. Kind of important in a dry part of the country. But guess what? Annual precipitation has not exhibited recent trends or variability that might be attributed to anthropogenic climate change. So the big word there, some of you know it, anthropogenic means human caused. And so we just don't have data that supports that we've had a statistically significant change in precipitation one way or another. Again, this is a restatement. No long-term trends in annual precipitation have been detected in Colorado. You might ask why. And basically it's because we have really highly variable precipitation from year to year. And the variability makes it too difficult to really do a statistically significant change right now. The change would have to be very dramatic. And you can see that on some of these maps. These are some of the projected maps looking forward to 2050. So on the left, you have temperature change. So we're looking at what, 3.5 to 4 degrees. And on the right is precipitation change. And we are predicted to be in that 0 to +5 at the most. And that's by 2050. Next topic. How about drought? Palmer Drought Severity Index, which is a standard way to measure drought, it does show a trend in Colorado towards more severe soil moisture drought over the past 30 years. Maybe it's not quite that clear though, because really when you start looking at tree rings and other indicators for Colorado, you show multiple drought years prior to 1900 that were more severe and sustained than any unobserved record. So you know, we only have records back to that was at 1879, something like that. And so before that, we know there were some pretty severe droughts. And of course, I just got this in the email this morning. As I was kind of going through this presentation, I got an email today. Governor Polis activates drought plan and task force as severe drought expands across southern and eastern regions. We have right now 81% of the state is in severe or extreme drought. We are not in Summit County, but we are increasingly drying out. What does this mean? This is a graph showing, so the red bars are each year below average, that Palmer drought index, and then the blue ones are above, right? So this is 1900 to 2013. And you can see there are just periods. This is what Colorado does. We have periods of drought. And that's just kind of what we do. And that's what makes it hard to sort out, because you can see how the difference between the peaks of really wet weather and the depths of the really droughty weather years are pretty significant. And so it's hard to sort trends out of data like this. Snow. Something important for up here. Our snowpack statewide, measured as of April 1st in snow water equivalent, has mostly been below average since 2000 in all of Colorado's river basins. And we don't always feel that in Summit County, because last year was a really big snow year, and we've had big snow years. But by April 1, a lot of times that's when the changes in our climate tend to really hit us, and we don't have as much snow then, even though we've had a pretty good snow year. And what does that mean? Why is that? I agree that it's warmer winter and spring temperatures lead to a smaller snowpack in the spring. So it doesn't mean it doesn't snow a lot in the wintertime, and we don't have plenty to go skiing on and other things. But by the time spring comes around, we're losing snow faster. How about stream flow?
Hey, Brad, real quick.
Yeah.
So can you talk a bit more about like the impact of us losing that snowpack quickly? Because I'm like thinking about it. It's like if the snow's there and we have a good strong winter of snow, like what impact does it make if we lose that quicker, I guess?
Yeah, and I'm gonna start talking about that. So, but that's a good question. These things are all like interconnected, right? And so when we dry out early, if it dries out earlier, that can be potentially a problem, right? And I will talk about that in just a second. And so you can see that, and one of the effects of our snowpack going away earlier in the spring is its impact on stream flow. And so we have some evidence that stream flow has been reduced, and particularly lower in the Colorado, even beyond into Utah and Arizona and stuff like that. But we have more. There's a number of more recent publications, scientific publications, that show that our stream flow is starting to really be reduced, but it's being reduced by higher temperatures and not by lower precipitation, which is kind of interesting. And that warmer springs that we were just talking about for snow, the timing of our snow melt and the peak flows are shifted earlier into the spring. And I think this estimate of 1 to 4 weeks is actually even a little bit low, because I think we've seen that 4 weeks in Summit County a lot in the last 20 years. But this is a kind of a generalization for all of Colorado. So what does that mean? This is a projected changes in annual stream flow. Some of these are out of the state, as you can see. The Gunnison at Grand Junction Colorado, that's down below the state line. But you can see generally these are box plots. So if they're at that 0 line, which is where it goes from yellow to blue, right, that's basically no change. So you can see most of these are either, and these are 2 different scenarios, these 2 different box plots. So if you look at them and kind of look overall at the river basins in Colorado and downstream, stream flows are either lower or close to normal. And this is older data. This is a stream flow. This is really interesting. I'm a hydrologist. I love hydrographs. We don't work with them enough. So the top part is it's the gray line this is a runoff hydrograph. So this is stream flow, monthly stream flow through 1 year. So this is the gray dots are 1971 to 2000. And then, which we've already had, there was warming by that point, right? And then the blue one is 2035 to 2064 projections. And this is for the Colorado River, for basically the whole state. So I think we're seeing in smaller basins like the Blue River, we're seeing more impact than this. And so if you look at those box plots down below by month, the percent change in runoff, look at April and May and even March, those are significantly higher. And then June, July, August are all lower, and it takes a while just to get back to normal. And so this is what we're really seeing, and we're measuring this already. And I need to come up with some of the real data to look at for this, but it depends on year. Obviously, again, we have a lot of variability by year, but this is a really good simulation of what we've actually been seeing. So we're getting peak flows closer to May now, towards the end of May instead of June. And it has a significant change, because by the time you get down to July, it's changed. Stream flow is down quite a bit. So what else does it mean? Keep going on Cam's question. And so this is Lake Dillon. A lot of you know this. I-70. It's Frisco down below. This is beautiful day in the mountains, right? And of course, I have to show my fire simulation. Got to get around to fire. For those of you who know me. So some of the old data, so 3-4 years ago, we were talking about, there was this research that said fire season 65 days longer. And I really didn't even think that that was what was happening here. We have some new analysis now that, this is this paper by Jolly, and they looked at this. And again, this was from basically 1979 to 2013, and it's global. So it's big scale. But you can kind of see on this map that where we are in Colorado, we're at that about a 0.5. This is fire season length change in days per year. So he was looking at, basically 1980 to 5-6 years ago. And so it's a 30-year, more than about a 35-year period. So it's about where we are. This is one of the tables from the report. This is where we are. We're temperate conifer forests. So that mean fire weather season length trend, lots of data, and there's even an acronym for it. How about that? It's about 0.2 days per year. So if you start adding that up over, 30 years, 35 years, you start getting to be in about a week. And so what does a week in fire season mean in the high country? Oops, I'm sorry. I want to stay back on this one. A week in the fire season extension in the high country usually means we get that runoff. You looked at that runoff coming off earlier, right? And so it's warming up earlier, and we're getting rid of our stream flow, which reduces the amount of available moisture. And then that's what creates that fire season getting longer. And we have 2 fire seasons in the high country. One's in the spring, late spring, early summer, and the other's in the fall. And so the longer we have, most of our fire seasons up here are pretty short. And because we go into monsoons, which gets things wet, and then we go into really cold weather in the fall, and we just don't have enough, there's just not enough heat to have a fire. So if we extend those periods out, especially in the high country, we just have a much higher risk of having larger fires. And again, this is older research now. This is from 2010 on U.S. Forest Service land, our national forest. Number of wildfires in Colorado was up 150%. And so let's see some more data. Now we're looking at, this is a more recent publication, a lot more detail. Again, now, so we're looking at these green spots. You can probably see Colorado, and then look at that graph that I circled. We have one of the higher, steeper trends in number of large fires per ecosystem. That's the Rocky Mountains, of which, there's quite a bit in Colorado. And so, some pretty significant research here, well supported. And this is only through 2011. In Colorado, 2012 was a big fire year. 17, we had fires in 18. So we've had 3 fire years since then that have given us significant fires. So I'm guessing it would go up. So one last piece of research to kind of take a quick look at. Some of you have seen this. This is some really interesting research. This map is projected changes in average area burned in a wildfire with 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit rise in average temperatures. And what we say we've experienced in Colorado? 2 already, right? And going to 4. And if you look at that dark red piece, that's in the kind of 500 to 600% increase category. What that really means, I'm not sure. This is kind of, this is the scary research, but I think when we look at some of the hiking, you see the red pieces on this map, they're all the high country. And so I think the high country, because we've got a lot of elevation change, we're more susceptible to changes in climate. And then when you look at the other piece that they did in this is they looked at projected changes in suitable ranges for some of the forest types. And so if you look at the recent historical suitability is on the left, and the projected by 2060, so this is in 2050, it's 10 years after that, it's on the right. But you can see some very dramatic changes. And in Colorado, that's a bit scary if that's really what it is. That means, a lot of our forest is basically gone. Not sure I agree with that either, but we really don't know what 2060 is going to look like. But a lot of if you look at the color chart, the lodgepole pine gets reduced significantly. A lot of the Engelmann spruce is still around because that's the highest elevation species we have. Ponderosa pine is, a lot of that is gone, according to that map. Pretty scary depiction of what it is, of what it could be by 2060, which is only 40 years away. And then finally, this is where that initial report that I showed to begin with, and you can see the updated executive summary in 2018 there. That's what I was taking some of those bullet points from. And that's the website on the bottom. You can just do Western Water Assessment, Google that, and you'll find it. A lot of information here. There's a ton of information out there, and I don't want to just try to scare everybody, but I feel like we've had in Colorado, I have seen in the almost 30 years I've been working here in the high country, I've seen a lot of changes in the way the weather has changed and the way fires burn and um, stream flow changes. I feel like I've seen it all. And so I, I encourage you all to get involved as much as you can and find out more. And that's my presentation. So love to have any questions.
I'd love for you to talk a bit about what are some easy things that people can do to help alleviate this impact in the high country in Colorado?
Yeah, good question. So Summit County is actually relatively unique in Colorado, like we always say. People that live here anyway like to think we're special. But Summit County has just adopted a climate action plan. It's got a number of different components in it. And I think encouraging, the county officials to work hard to adopt that plan, do what you can. I mean, doing things like recycling are fine and driving less are fine, but really we need to make some pretty dramatic changes. And I think advocating for government officials mandating those changes is really probably where we need to go. There's also a forest component to the climate action plan, which the Forest Health Task Force is trying to work with the county on. And that is unique. I don't know anyone else in Colorado that has that piece of it. So there's some opportunities there.
Also, if let people know, kind of like plug the Forest Health Task Force a bit too, and chat about that. How can people get involved with that if they're hoping to at all?
Yeah, we've been. The Forest Health Task Force, the local forest collaborative group. We've been around for, I don't know, 14, 15 years now. And we started out working after the pine beetle started hitting and in like 04, 03, 04, or something like that. And we've been working just involving citizens and all the stakeholder groups, State Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, county, open space and trails, towns, to get everybody involved in what's going on in our forests and what can we do. We did a field trip last week up on Peak 7 and looked at some of the past fuel breaks that were done and looked at some of the new ones that are being proposed and talked about, what do they mean? What does it look like? What's going to happen? And we were fortunate. It was pretty fun. We were fortunate enough to have there was a U.S. Forest Service hotshot team out there cutting some trees down. And so we made them stop for a little while and talk to them. And so pretty interesting stuff, but it's open to the public. We do a monthly meeting. Anyone's interested. You can get information. FDRD is one of our strong partners. So it's a great partnership right now.
Yeah, if anyone's interested in getting involved with that, just reach out to us at Friends of the Dillon Ranger District and we'll get you connected through that. But yeah, it's a really cool program that Brad's been working hard for a long time, as he said. But just want to thank you, Brad, for putting your time outside of your daily business hours to do this. And to anyone out there listening, like Brad does this and so much more for our organization, and it's volunteers like Brad that keep us running. So a big thanks to Brad for putting this together and everything else that he does. And a big thanks for everyone for tuning in too. So this will be posted on Facebook and also on our YouTube channel. So it'll be out there for however long, it'll be on the interweb for anyone to access. So this is very important information, as I'm sure you picked up. But yeah, this is a cool series that we're doing, and hopefully we'll be able to spread the good news and get more people involved in this important stuff. But unless you got anything else to add, Brad, I think we'll sign off here.
No, No, thanks for listening.
Oh, we got one question for you from Walt. It says, in an attempt to slow temperature increase, Vail has said they were going to go 100% green. Has another large company stated a similar goal?
Has who stated a similar goal?
He's just asking if any other large companies have stated a similar goal.
Yeah, there have been. You know, I mean, going green is, usually that means they're trying to buy like renewable energy and from Excel, and it does have an impact because it forces Excel to get their renewable energy generation portfolio up, because they do have a fair amount of demand. I do think, and that's another way to force change, is if you work for a company, or you interact with other larger companies, and let them know you think this is important, and they should take a zero emissions pledge and go for it and set some goals and do it. I mean, these smaller, Vail isn't really that big of a company. We think they're kind of really big up here, but there's a lot of larger companies that have collectively can make a difference. So yeah, encourage people to do it.
It's muted. Sorry. Thanks again, Brad, for putting this together. It was a great presentation. And Facebook, we will see you on Thursday. Our next presentation is from a U.S. Geologic Survey mapper. He's going to talk about the streams and the lakes in the Dillon Ranger District. Really awesome guy. He put together all of the maps of the streams and lakes of the entire country into GIS, or he's part of that team. So he knows this stuff like the back of his hand. So very interesting. 5 p.m. next week, on Thursday. So we'll see you then. Thanks again, Brad. We'll tune off or sign off.